Welcome to Check In with Jason Lauritsen, where we explore how to create human, connected workplaces that employees love and that fuel organizational success. Each week, I invite someone who is leading the way in this work to join me to both educate and inspire us. My guest today is Dr. Jenna Sage. Jenna wears many hats professionally, as you'll learn. She is the Director of Organizational Wellness and Wellbeing at Ultimate Medical Academy. She's also an executive coach and author who helps leaders navigate the emotional terrain of grief, caregiving, and profound life transitions without losing clarity, compassion, or the capacity to lead. And you're going to learn all about all the things today. So, Jenna, thanks so much for joining me.
Hi, it's so great to be here today. I want to say excited to have the conversation. I don't know if that's the right word, maybe humbled or honored to be here and have the conversation that we're going to have together. So thank you for the invite.
Feeling is mutual. Yeah. So thanks for being here. So let's start first, as I like to always do when I have these conversations, just to get a little bit more background and context about you. So let's start with learning a little bit more about the work that you do. And I know you wear, like, as I mentioned, a couple of different hats. So tell us about all the hats and the things that Jenna does.
Yeah, absolutely. So like many people out there, right, there's a full life that happens. But in my day-to-day, like you mentioned, I support a large online organization. Most of the team members are fully remote. And the purpose of my work is really to help them in their workplace wellness journey and to make sure that the organization has the resources and accessible sorts or supports for team members to access when they're in need, make sure that they're thriving in the workplace. In the evenings, when I have all of this extra time, just like everybody else, I continue to try to work as an advocate and support people in the community. I have a nonprofit organization that I run. I do executive coaching and coaching for starting professionals. I work on several boards, work as a speaker, again, to kind of share my voice, and I've authored several books. But really the most important hat that I wear on a regular basis and every single day above and beyond all of that is I'm a caregiver. I support my loved one, my husband, who has terminal cancer. And so that journey has been a huge influence in a lot of the other work that I do. And so, again, I think it's a conversation that's important for us to have, and I'm looking forward to us really diving deeper into it.
For sure. And today we're going to talk a lot about kind of supporting sort of the lens of how do we support people who are navigating through loss in the workplace. We're going to talk about that. Yeah. Prior to you obviously getting to that, obviously you have been on the journey of are interested in wellness and well-being and that kind of work for a long time. Like, I'm curious, how did you find your way there? I'm always interested in kind of the origin story of first, how did you get into that work?
Absolutely. So, right, I think everybody's familiar with the meme where everybody kind of understands success like as a straight line, but really it's this like curvy, wavy way to get to everything. And that's definitely been my career journey. But I really started early on as a classroom teacher, and I was supporting students at the time who were diagnosed with emotional behavioral disabilities. And in supporting those students and their other teachers and their families, what I was exposed to and came to understand was a lot of trauma and neglect and mental health issues and needs. And it fueled a passion in me to, like I said, be a voice for those who don't often have a voice in that space. So I ended up getting a doctoral degree in special education and really focused kind of the first part of my career in supporting students and families and teachers, and made a jump out of public education as a life and career move at a time that was important for me for a lot of reasons that we'll probably talk more about. But ultimately, that took me to a role where I was able to transform that into supporting employees and transferring that work in the reality that all of us live these really whole and complex and complicated lives that are full of ups and downs and ebbs and flows, and light and dark. And Not a lot of organizations have somebody who's there to support employees along that path and ensure that there are resources and talk about things that are difficult to talk about. And so it has really, again, kind of fueled this, not just opportunity, but passion to talk about some of the more difficult things. Because what I have come to understand is life has those challenges and we can't prevent them from happening. So it's better to have preventative mechanisms and to have resilient strategies and coping skills. And my career has given me an opportunity to continue to build that toolbox. And then my lived experience as a caregiver has just like polished every one of those tools up or sharpened every one of them for me so that I know how to apply them and use them. So, and now I just want to share that with more people.
Yeah. It's almost like sometimes your story reminds me of, sometimes you hear people say that's like that your background, sort of your journey prepares you. It's like, it's almost like you were preparing for this thing that was going to happen in your life. Or the other side of it is the universe is like, hey, I know you think you have this figured out. Let me drop this thing on you and see, let's learn how this actually works. Let's get into it. So it's really, I think, interesting the intersection of all of that. So let's, it feels like let's transition. That feels like the right time to do that. And so when you and I connected, as oftentimes, when I have a guest that we're exploring kind of what we want to talk about when we get together. And I don't know that I knew going into our conversation where we were going or what we were going to talk about. And then as you and I were talking, you were like, here's the thing I really want to talk about. And it's, about how do we support people through loss at work? And it's grounded in my own experience as a caregiver for my husband. And it was like, okay, this is going to be a different kind of conversation than what we often have, but it feels like a really important conversation because I know like when I think about this, I certainly don't have any answers when it comes to this and have been around that. I've heard people talk about this. I've heard people that have been on other sides of it. And so this is all sort of born out of your own personal experience. You hinted at it, but I would love for you to kind of share the journey. Like take us back to kind of how you and your husband's journey and what that looks like and then kind of how that brings us to today and kind of where you're at in that. And I think then because what you had shared with me, just for context as people are listening, is you said, hey, this is what happened. And I'd really like to have a conversation about what I wish people knew or how we can help people know how to support people like me that are navigating through this kind of thing. And so let's start with your story. Like if you would share a little bit about kind of the journey and how we ended up here talking today.
First of all, again, just thank you for the opportunity because it's a journey that I haven't even talked about very much. And I know that one of the things in our initial conversation and communication ongoing has been creating a comfortable space for me to tell my story and talk about it because I haven't felt comfortable really talking about it and sharing it because I have to talk about things like death and dying and loss and grief. And I literally walked up to my husband this morning, and here's the irony, right? Like I keep a roll of toilet paper on my desk at all times, all days, because I never know when emotion is going to hit. I walked up to my husband this morning and I said, what's funny? I have this podcast this afternoon and it's been so long since I've thought about when you got diagnosed and what that experience was and where we were in our life. Like it's been almost a decade and we have learned to live every single day, day to day, that thinking back that far just seems so odd. But what I will share is about a decade ago, my husband and I were doing what every young 30-some-year-old couple was doing. We had purchased our first house. We were just starting a business. We were literally 2 months into starting his dream business. we were trying to start a family. And I really noticed behavioral and personality changes, just things that were out of the norm. And what I didn't mention is I'm a trained behavior analyst. So when I was in the classroom, like that's what I was really doing, was helping teachers and kids develop highly prescribed functional behavioral plans. Like I'm trained to pay attention to trends and patterns, and I knew something was off, something was different, and it was harder for him to recognize at first, but he started also having some physical symptoms and challenges. And again, this is all happening when we're trying to start and spark so much of our young lives, that even the challenge of going to doctors and having appointments was difficult, taking time off from work and scheduling all of them. It was literally hundreds of doctors before we ended up getting a diagnosis. And that's multiple specialists, that's hospitals and treatment centers and all different kinds of places and people and tests. And through that experience, we learned to become really good advocates, because interacting with a lot of different professionals, as much as they care, they're not interacting with each other on a regular basis. And so you have to be the person that's helping communicate and share. And that means you have to learn how to articulate. You have to learn how to translate medical information. And so it was a really chance appointment that we were at, where he was experiencing a physical symptom. He was flushing. That's one of the symptoms of this type of cancer, which is like his face would get really red and he would get hot. And he'd never experienced it with doctors ever present. And at that moment he did. We were with an endocrinologist. I remember like I could transport us there into the hallway when this exchange happened. His endocrinologist walked out, and it just so happened that his neurologist walked past the hallway, and the endocrinologist said, "Hey, it seems like he's having this flash right now." Neurologist came in and they chit-chat. They order a test, and 2 weeks later, we're sitting in his primary care doctor's office, and he opens a manila folder, and he says, "You have cancer." And he shuts the manila folder, and he walks out of the office. And I really have not thought about that or said those words in so long. And like didn't explain what kind of cancer or anything. And looking back on it so many years later, like I understand that's got to be the hardest thing to say to anybody. Like I can't imagine delivering that news to somebody, to a young couple. Like he'd been his doctor for a long time. And like that's the instant. Like your life, our lives have never been the same since that moment. And that diagnosis, right? Like you have to grieve the life that you thought you were going to live. That diagnosis ended up creating a path of infertility that we didn't know was going to impact our life together. We had to grieve that loss. It required him to medically retire at one point. And like, he was the primary caregiver. Like he's the big, tough alpha man. Like he was a logger up in the UP of Michigan. He builds cars. And over a decade, we've navigated one of the hardest things in a relationship, which is a complete role reversal and dynamic shift in who's taking care of who. And that's probably a whole nother conversation to talk about how difficult that is to navigate in marriage. But through all of that, we've also learned so many wonderful things together, and we've become experts in these areas that like we never imagined we would be experts in. And again, what I'm hopeful for is that this has given, especially me, an ability to share with others, like how to navigate things. We learned about roles like oncology financial advocates. Who knew that was ever a thing? But like, that was something I needed in my life at one point. Thank goodness there is one. Social workers, like there's so many things that I never realized would become a resource for us in our life. So, here we are like a decade later. And I mean, I've said goodbye to him. We have had celebrations of life because it has felt like it's the end. We have obviously cried a lot. We've laughed a lot. We talk about death and dying and loss and grief very differently now. And I think it's important that everybody does, because everybody is going to lose someone or something. Everybody experiences loss in some capacity. So it's not just important in my life and experience in our journey. It's important in everybody's.
Thank you for that. So many questions. I think my script just got thrown out the window because I have so many other questions, but we'll get to all of it. I want to start with what you just said, because I think, at least it feels to me, that so much of the difficulty we have with supporting someone like you and your husband going through this is exactly what you just talked about, is like you've shifted how you talk about in your relationship with death and loss and dying and all of that. What is it that you have learned when you think about kind of and maybe, and I don't know, you might have had a different relationship with this because of the work that you had done and working with the kids and the trauma. I don't know, but like, I'm curious what you've learned. What is it about this topic that you've noticed, the pre and the post, from where you are today to where you were, and what could we learn about that? Like, what is it that makes that topic so, other than the obvious, is that nobody wants to sort of stare down their mortality, but what else? What else is there underneath that?
I don't want to go into like some Tim McGraw song, but live like you're dying. Like it is the lesson that I learned about pre-grief and understanding the grief process. And I'll tell you, I thought I was an expert. I thought that understanding all of the textbook and watching other people experience loss gave me some level of expertise. But until I lived with death and loss on a daily basis, I really didn't understand it. And ultimately, it's understandable to kind of what I call pre-grieve, which is to anticipate the loss and to prepare your soul and your mind and your body like that loss is coming. It's so natural to do, but it's so unhealthy because it robs you of the actual life that you have with that person. And so one of the most important things that I've learned to do is try to be mindful of those moments. And that sounds very mental healthy, right? And wellnessy of me. But I apply that mindfulness in creating boundaries, work and life boundaries, and ensuring that I try to optimize the time that we have together and create opportunities for that time and energy. I'll be honest, there are times when it's like parenting, right? Like if he's not feeling well and he needs to take a rest, then I feel obligated. Like it's time for me to go take a nap and take a rest. And like, that seems silly because we're grown adults, but like, I don't want to waste that time not being there because I never know when that time is going to be gone.
Sure.
And I know it's going to be gone. That's the reality I live with.
Yeah. So let's I think one of the things that I think, or one of the kind of driving things underneath why you wanted to have this conversation is really to talk about, some of the barriers and obstacles or awkwardness or whatever people feel about how to support, how we as leaders can support people, how we can support coworkers, how the organizations can support people that are experiencing this. Let's go, I want to go all the way back if we can, to even because I think we oftentimes don't even, this conversation doesn't even start until after someone dies, right? Yeah. You've lost someone, and that's the obvious thing. And I had to take my bereavement leave, and that's what we think is supporting people, right? Yep. And the reality is the process for you started with that first doctor's appointment. And then there were hundreds of doctor's appointments, and there was all of that stuff. And I'm curious, during that time, when you think about kind of what was happening. Because in what I'm thinking about here, there's a couple of things. There's sort of what does organizational support look like, and like what do you wish? Like I don't know what was happening for you in that at that point in terms of your career, but like what was helpful, what wasn't helpful. But the other part of it, I guess, for me is that I think is more interesting is I think managers and leaders, I think, struggle a lot with if I have someone on my team like you and that's going through this, I don't know. I feel like as a leader, I'm kind of dancing through a minefield, right? And I want to demonstrate care. I want to be connected. I want to show support. But I also don't want to feel, I want you to feel like I'm prying into things I shouldn't be. I also feel incompetent to support you in things you're going through. I don't have any skill set to offer you. And so can you unpack, like even in those early, during the diagnostic, before it was even known what was going on, I'm sure you were terrified. You had all of this demand for schedules and getting out of work and whatever. What was that like, and what worked, what was helpful, and what do you wish people knew about how to support someone when they're in that part or in a situation like that?
There's so many things. Again, it's not even easy for me to go back to that time and remember that, but a lot of it was the basics, right? The logistics of it. It was navigating schedules. It was managing time off. And again, this was early in my career, so I wasn't earning a lot of time off. And there was a point where I was still working in classrooms. So I felt obligated to be there to support all of these other people. So a lot of it was trying to create compromise in those schedules. I tried to do things like have FaceTime during appointments, try to do some telehealth things, but I'll share one really early experience that was incredibly influential, and that was just navigating finding care for him in the beginning and understanding insurance and what insurance would cover and wouldn't cover. And again, I felt like I was early in my career and pretty naive. Insurance is already hard enough for most people to navigate, and understanding your medical benefits and coverage, especially when it's something this huge. And now 10 years later and working the role that I work, like I understand the organizational side of benefits and what medical coverage means. And so like that juxtaposition is so interesting to me, being able to understand both sides. But really early on in navigating this, I was trying to find a cancer center, like a treatment center that would provide the medication that was necessary. He still, 10 years later, gets a shot every 3 weeks. It's similar to a chemotherapy treatment, but not in the traditional sense that most people know. And the easiest way for me to explain it to most people is like, this is not a ring the bell cancer. This is a rare terminal cancer. And so the treatment is a little different, but I wasn't finding anybody that would take my insurance. And that was terrifying because I felt useless. Like I felt like I wasn't able to provide for the person that I cared for the most. And I didn't know how to navigate that because I couldn't just leave my job. That would make it even more difficult. And I was sitting in my office with a coworker at the time on a lunch break, and I called literally the last number on the list of treatment centers that our insurance, that were in network. And when that woman picked up the phone and I explained the situation, I remember so vividly her saying, "It's okay, honey. We're going to take care of you. We're going to take care of you." And when I tell you the loyalty that we have, like that is still the treatment center that he goes to, because they took care of us. They helped me navigate. And it wasn't even just like, hey, he needs this shot. It was, we need specialists. We need to understand how to get help. Again, like finances, there's so many things. And they walked us through a lot of it. And so what I will say is it takes a lot of persistence, and I'm lucky that I did have that training and background to know how to kind of be an advocate and stand up and be that voice. And I know so many people don't know how to do that. And it's scary to do that. It's scary to talk to doctors. It's scary to not know and to not have the answers. And so again, what I know is there are more and more people who are navigating a similar journey to me. And in this day and age, it feels like families, it's almost impossible for them to not have some experience around not just cancer, but again, just grief and loss, that it's important to have a level of understanding. And understanding is not the same thing as pity and honestly, what I'll say is like empathy, sympathy, none of it. Like just have understanding, just compassion. One of the most important things in our experience has just been people's silence.
So as you, actually, I want to go back because I want you like to kind of specifically talk about if I'm a leader, if I'm a manager and I have someone on my team, give me some, like, what has been helpful, what is helpful, what is not helpful that managers think might be helpful. Like, can you break that down a little bit? Because I think that's where people get crippled. And when they get crippled or they don't feel confident, they just avoid the conversation.
So
or they,
true.
you know what I mean? And so can you like give us some guidelines? What's helpful in this situation?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, like as a leader, especially, you are not obligated to be somebody's therapist or counselor. Like, let that go. You don't have to fix their problems. If somebody wants to disclose and share because it's impacting their work schedule or the functioning of their job, then listen to them and know your benefits and resources. So be a user of your employee assistance program or any other supplemental resources or supports that are out there. Understand your benefits or know who to guide that person to get help with their benefits. If there's a service or a person at your organization, don't feel like you have to have all of the answers. I think is one of the most important things. Like, lift that burden from yourself. I never expected anybody. I didn't have the answers. I didn't expect any of my leaders to have the answers. I just expected grace. Just know that I'm not going to know how to show up sometimes. Today, I didn't, like, my husband literally walked through the door and walked out the door. Right now, I have no idea. Like, did he need something? Did he forget something? I have, like, there's a little pit in my stomach that's still like, I'm going to text him right away afterwards to make sure. So like that level of just grace and flexibility is so important. I don't know what's going to happen from day to day. If he's going to feel sick, if I'm not going to feel well, if I'm not going to have the energy, or if I'm just going to feel agitated or scared. Like that, those are real things. Again, I keep a roll of tissue paper on my desk because I just don't know how I might show up each day. So that flexibility is really helpful. I think some of the other realities, and listen, this is if you're a leader or if you're a friend, like this just as a human. And I think you experienced this. This is day to day to me. So I will often say, my husband has a rare terminal cancer. And almost always people's response is, I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. And that, I know where that comes from. I understand that. Rooted, human, like, yes. But I don't want you to feel sorry. Like, that's not the feeling that we want, that I want. I know it's not the feeling that he wants. All we need is a thank you for sharing, or I heard you. Like, that's, or just if you're there, a hand on a shoulder, a hug if it's a friend. Like, again, you're not expected to have the answers.
Yeah.
I think one of the other difficult things that I've really navigated, again, in personal and professional life, is setting those boundaries. So family time, obviously, my time with him, I mentioned that is so important. So networking events, after work events, I don't go to those. And that limits me professionally, and I know that. Those are important. But that was a boundary that I set for myself early, and I've learned to articulate it better and better to leaders and managers. But at first, it probably comes off as standoffish or not team-oriented, but that's definitely never the intention, right? And so having an understanding about that, and again, I've learned how to say that better, but those boundaries are really valuable, and that time is important. And then the last one I'll throw out there, Jason, is like everyone's Aunt Susie's uncle's cousin's first removed, like, brother's uncle has some miracle remedy or cure. And like, yoga isn't going to fix this.
Right.
There's no magic drink. And so like, if I'm sharing, it's not to get advice back. Trust me, we have tried every remedy. We have researched every cure. I would fly him to the moon and back if I knew that was going to fix this. I am a fixer. There is no fixing this problem. So you don't have to offer to fix it.
Yeah. Well, and I guess that brings me to, I do think that, and I'm sincerely curious about when and how often is it appropriate to ask, what can I do? How can I help? Because, I'm sure at some point there's a point of diminishing return.
Right.
But as a manager, you want to, like, if you care, you want to continue to demonstrate, like, I'm here, I want to provide support, but I don't want you to feel like also the only thing I see about you is this situation that you are navigating. And so how have you found, like, and how do you advise leaders when you're coaching them to find that balance with someone?
I know that I have taken more of a, when I need to share, I'll share kind of approach. And so I think for leaders and managers, and I mean, here's the reality, right? When they're having those check-ins on a regular basis and they're asking their check-in questions, one of the questions that they throw in might be, through this loss, do you need me to check in with you on a regular basis about that specifically? Let me know. And if it changes, let me know, because they might not know. I don't know. And a year and a half ago, I lost my dad. And again, I thought that I understood grief because I was pre-grieving this experience with my husband. But then when I lost my dad, grief exploded in a completely different way and impacted, again, my perspective and my focus. And so that required me to talk to my leadership and managers different. And I think it's being agile. And one of the things I always talk about too, just in general, is don't just focus on somebody's kind of lows, but focus on when they have highs too, because both of those things let us know that something might be different. And you're only going to know that if you're checking in on a regular basis and you have a rapport and a relationship with the person.
Yeah. One of the things, and I guess I'm curious what you, like, my instinct would be to, and I guess it depends on the individual, right? Every individual is going to be different. But one of the things that I know I've used in the past is also kind of in your conversations, when you're having a conversation about it, when you are in one of those conversations and you want to demonstrate support, one of the things I would be prone to do would be to say, hey, like, I'm here. I want to be supportive. I also don't want to overstep. I don't want you to feel like this is something I'm trying to pull out of you. And so what I'd like to do is ask your commitment that when you need something, that I can trust you to ask me for it. Or if there's something you feel like I need to know, that you will tell me, because if you'll make that commitment to me, then that allows me not to feel like I need to be asking you all the time about what you need.
Absolutely. And also hopefully helps that person understand that they have to be self-reflective and self-regulate in this process and understand their grieving process and how to communicate what they might need or learn what they might need through that process. Do they need more flexibility? Do they need schedule changes? Do they need more or less projects? Do they need a bigger team? I mean, they might need more work. Like, the reality is some people, when they lose, they need more. Work is the thing they need to dive into. And so I think it's also making space for that and, having that open conversation.
Yeah. So let me bring it. I'm going to ask kind of a big question of you to kind of try to capture the things that maybe we don't like. This conversation could be another hour long probably, but based on your experience over the last, 5 years, 10 years, what are the three biggest things that organizations are doing wrong today relative to supporting employees in loss? And in each of those three, what what should they be doing instead?
Mm.
I didn't warn you that I was going to ask this question, so I'm going to count on you to roll with me here.
Keep me on track on this one.
Okay.
I will say one of the first things is not talking about it, right? So they're not having conversations just in general about mental health, wellness, grief, loss, and being open about those conversations. So the first thing I would do is find a champion or someone in your organization with expertise, or hire out a consultant. Contact me, but start having conversations about death, dying, loss, grief, caregiving, right? Like there are so many different kinds of caregivers, and there are a lot of dynamics about what goes into how they might need support and help. So I would definitely say that would be one thing. The other thing is look at your bereavement policy. Like when is the last time organizations really took a heartfelt and compassionate look at what their bereavement policy is? And I did a nice, AI ChatGPT search earlier. What is the most common bereavement policy across the United States? It is still 3 to 5 days. And what I can tell you is, sure, you might be able to plan and have a funeral in 3 to 5 days, but you are not grieving loss in 3 to 5 days, especially it's loss of a loved one. Even loss of promotion, loss of a pet, loss of an identity, that takes more than 3 to 5 days. And you don't get bereavement for any of those because there isn't a death certificate, right? Yeah. So is there an opportunity to build compassion or buffers in that policy? And maybe there aren't, but just opening the conversation, I think, is such an important place for organizations and workplaces to go.
Jenna, can I interrupt you on that one just to ask? Because I've talked with someone else recently about this, and they were saying, to your earlier point, it's like this is one of those really interesting places where it's like the bereavement policy is basically giving you time off to handle some business, right? It's time off to do whatever, but it's not really designed around what it is that you need, right? Because some people, to the point you just made, there are people that they don't want to be off. They want to be at work around people because that's what's helping them hang on to the earth right now. They need therapy, right? That's what they need, somebody to help them through it. They need a support group. They need whatever. And so it would be interesting if bereavement policy got completely kind of blown up and replaced with kind of like a loss support policy or something that had some flexibility in it for employees to get what they actually needed when it happened.
Absolutely. Like coaching and support, somebody who understands that you can have open conversations with. Absolutely. One of the most valuable resources that I have found through this entire process has been Facebook social groups, like support groups. Because they've gone through the same experience, right? They've become kind of doctors in their own right in researching their diagnoses and reading through radiology reports, and having that validation from another group of people is incredibly helpful. Are you going to get that in the workplace? Probably not, but could the workplace help you find peer support groups or navigate to that? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, have clinicians, have a program with a vendor where they can get additional psychology or psychiatry support for a period of time. Yes, that all should be happening.
Awesome. Well, those are two really good, really big ones. Do you have a third one you want to throw on the table?
Oh, gosh. I don't think anything really comes to mind other than sharing things like this, like have time and space to invite people in to have the conversation, and again, just be open to it. I think especially as leaders, if you are in the C-suite and you've experienced loss, be transparent, be vulnerable, have conversations about it. You don't have to be personal, right? But you can let people know that this is reality. This is reality, and it's a difficult reality for a lot of people. But like I said, I would not change a thing in my world. I would not change a thing.
I think that what you just said brings up, like, what I can envision is an opportunity inside of organizations to do some training or to offer up some resources to employees and leaders and managers on how to support someone who is going through loss or is grieving or is navigating through really difficult times, like giving people tools on how to be in relationship with those people in a way that's helpful and supportive. Because I think most people come from a good place. We come from a good place and we say the wrong thing because we don't know what to say, because nobody has ever told us what to say. And so that the cycle gets repeated over and over and over and over again. And so it would be nice to interrupt that cycle. And I can see like Dr. Jenna leading the charge on this. So
I'm ready.
All right.
I'm ready. I let's have the conversation. If you're an organization, like invite me and let's keep talking about this. Let's continue to do this. I would be inspired if in the future this weren't taboo and we weren't sweeping death and dying and loss under the rug, especially in the workplace.
Well, you already answered the last question, I think, that I normally have, which is what do you hope work will look like differently in 5 years? And you already just did that, I think. So let's land this. Let's land this conversation. I am curious. This feels really appropriate today. I do a one-word checkout as we end all these conversation. And so, Jenna, in one word, how are you feeling as we wrap up this conversation?
Empowered. Yeah.
For me, it's grateful.
Oh, thank you.
On many levels. So thank you. So Jenna, I feel, again, like you said at the very beginning, I feel grateful and honored that you had this conversation with me. I feel like this is a really important and useful conversation that we just had. So I'm excited to share this. If people want to find you, if they want to connect with you, to learn more about you, to follow you, to maybe reach out and just say how grateful they are for you sharing this, where do they find you? How can they connect with you?
Absolutely. The two best ways are on my LinkedIn. So look me up, Dr. Jenna Sage. You can find me there. I continue to share words of inspiration and a little bit about my journey on LinkedIn. And then my website, www.beself.ist. Be selfist, which is this idea that we should be investing in ourselves. And again, this is a topic that we need to continue to invest in so that we have the strength and the resilience and the ability to be grateful for all that life throws at us. So I hope that people connect.
Well, thank you. I hope they do too. I am really grateful, really, really grateful that you were here with me today. So thank you, Jenna. I appreciate it. And thank you for listening. I hope you are inspired, moved to go back and take action, to do something within your organization, to make your organization better, more supportive, more friendly towards those employees that are going through some tough things, because there's more than you think. And so let's make room for them. Let's support them. Let's do better, because we can do better. Jenna's going to lead us on that journey, I think. And as I close, as I always remind you, please, please, please check in with those who matter most to you. I said we may only have today, maybe the most important thing that you do today. So go do it now, and I'll see you next time.